In question 1, you're provided with some information on the amount received in sales, and in the first instance, you're asked to draw a box plot. So, we are told, or the definition that we're provided in the question, is that an outlier is an observation that falls either 1.5 times the interquartile range above the upper quartile or 1.5 times the interquartile range below the lower quartile. So the first thing we've got to do is actually work out whether we've got any outliers. So the first calculation is going to be 14, which is the upper quartile here. So we're going to do 14 plus 1.5 times the interquartile range, which is going to be 14 minus 7, and that gives us 24.5. So when we're looking at the two highest values, we can see that this one here, this value here, 25, is actually going to be an outlier. Similarly, we're then going to have a look at if there are any outliers on the left-hand edge. So we're going to take the lower quartile, which is 7, and subtract 1.5 multiplied by the interquartile range. And that gives us a value of negative 3.5. So we can see that given the lowest two values of 3 and 4, there aren't actually any outliers on the left-hand side. So now we've got all the information we need to actually draw this. So in order to draw the box plot, remember that we are going to start with the box. So the lower quartile is 7. So we are going to have somewhere around here is going to be the lower quartile. The upper quartile we said was 14, which is going to be here somewhere. And we also need to mark on the median, which is going to be 12, which is going to be sort of there, not very accurate, but you get the idea. So that's going to be our box. Looking at the left-hand side then, we can look at the lowest value, which we said was 3. So we can mark on a 3 on the left-hand boundary. So that's going to be here. So we can draw our left-hand tail or whisker fairly easily. And that's because the lowest value here is above the definition for an outlier, which is negative 3.5. On the right hand side, however, it's slightly trickier because we've got two values here, 20, and this one here, 25, which is greater than the definition for an outlier here. And there's actually two ways that you can represent this. The first one is to say that, well, 25 is an outlier, so we're going to dismiss that. So the largest value, therefore, is 20, which is less than the definition of an outlier that we've got up here. So we're going to mark on 20. So this is actually going to be the whisker, and then all we're going to do is mark on our outlier as a single point here at 25. The other way you can do it is say, well, yeah, 25 is an outlier, so I'm actually just going to draw the boundary right up until the edge here. So the edge or the boundary is going to be 24.5. So you could alternatively draw the whisker going all the way up to 24.5, which is there. So you could also draw it there, and then again you've got the outlier marked on there. But it is key, whichever of these two methods you use for the right hand boundary, you do need to have the outlier marked on to get all 5 marks in this case. In part B, we are asked to comment on the skewness. Now, if you remember, there are a lot of different ways that you can calculate the skewness, but when you actually got a box or whisker plot, it's fairly straightforward. If you had a data set in which the data was not skewed, you would effectively have the median running through the center of your box. Now, we can see here that we haven't got that. We've got, so this obviously is Q2, this is Q3, and this is Q1. And we can see that the difference between Q2 and Q1, this difference here, is much bigger than the difference between Q3 and Q2. So just by visualizing it, we can see that it's negatively skewed or left skewed, you might have heard as well, but we go with negatively skewed. And we need to justify this with a reason. We'll only get both marks if we say it's negatively skewed, but we can also substantiate it with a reason. So the reason that we're going to need to state here is that Q2, so the median minus Q1, is greater than the difference between Q3 and Q1. In the final part of question 1, we are told that the company claims that for 75% of the months, the amount received per month is greater than 10,000. When asked to comment on this claim, and again, giving a reason for your answer. Now, if you're told that for 75% of the months, the amount received is greater than 10,000, we can also flip that and then say that for 25% of the months, the amount received is less than 10,000. So if this is the case here, we need to recognise that we should see on the box and whisker plot Q1, or the lower quartile, being 10,000. However, we can see from our diagram that Q1 is actually 7,000. So what that means is we can say that the amount received is greater than only £7,000 for 75% of the time. For it to be greater than 10,000, we would be looking approximately here, down this line here, and we can see that we're getting fairly close to the median here. So perhaps, we could work this out, but about 60%, something like that, would actually be greater than 10,000. But all we need to do for the marks here is to explain that the company is not justified, and the reason is that the lower quartile here is 7,000. So 75% of the months the income is greater than 7,000 and not the £10,000 figure that the company alludes to.